actually got three. One related to this farmers issue, the one related, of course, to the number of food insecure people, and the follow-up question on tobacco. Those are the three that I got.
Yeah.
So I'll attempt to answer. Let me start with the easiest of the three, and that the number of insecure people known after the Zimbabwe Livelihoods Assessment Committee report, which I assume is already underway, and they produce a rural livelihoods assessment and also an urban livelihoods assessment, which is why you heard the Minister of Labour, Public Service and Social Welfare say they will be able to respond to these intermittent aspects. But having said so, the context ought to be right, that what they are measuring is cereal insufficiency, not food insecurity, because the food basket includes much more than cereals. And so we must be mindful of that. That is why we need to wait for this ZIMLAC report. Then the second one relates to, let's deal with tobacco. That's why we have the Tobacco Value Chain Transformation Plan 2, which first aims to ensure that as a government, we said we wanted to increase tobacco production sustainably and with traceability to 500 million kilograms by 2030. And the discussion we've been having is that have we grown too quickly? Have we grown too fast in order to overwhelm our markets? Should we have a structured growth plan? And if so, how would we manage that? But we do have lessons from the past, which is why growers have growers' numbers. In the past, we have used to have quota systems for such production. We put in place an industry-wide market intelligence committee to be able to inform us on what the best way forward would be going into 2026, 2027. But we also need to explore value addition and beneficiation and take advantage of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area in order to be able to get more value for our tobacco. The tobacco that we export, we get 1.2 billion US, perhaps this year, 1.5 billion US dollars. Whereas if it is value added as cigarettes, it is worth 50, 60 billion US dollars on the international market. So clearly, Zimbabwe must go the value addition route, starting with just enhancing processing capacity so that we are able to process the tobacco as it is sold in season beyond the 280, 300 million processing capacity that we are told the industry has. Then we must go beyond just selling cut tobacco as cut rag into beneficiating into cigarettes so that we can get more of the value of our tobacco. Tobacco is generally grown on sandier and sandy loam soils where other crops are not as profitable as tobacco. So tobacco becomes the anchor rotation crop in that rotation. And maize can be grown, soybean, wheat very profitably after tobacco, but ordinarily the anchor rotation crop in any tobacco rotation is tobacco because generally of the historical viability issues. So we must also explore additional markets beyond the traditional markets. But at grower level, we must focus on producing quality. Ordinarily, 40 to 60% is leaf, and if it is good leaf, and Zimbabwe is historically known for producing flavor styles of tobacco, so that is what we must focus on. Our tobacco presentation at the auction floors is also an issue where we must improve the grading and everything else so that our presentation is better so that we can get more of the value of our crop. So if we put all this together, I think the ingredients for a very successful industry are in place and time will tell. Now to this confused reporting by journalists relating to what I said in Parliament as acting leader of government business and in the absence of the Minister of Lands and Rural Development is irrelevant to this meeting. But if you go to the sections of the Constitution, section 289, 293, and 295. It will tell you that it says the government must provide more secure title, which means beyond a permit, beyond a lease, into a title deed. So that is what A1 and A2 farmers are getting. If we go into the Constitution, it says we shall compensate former farm owners, white farmers, for the improvements that they've made on the land. And that is what we are saying, that the improvements that they've made on the land, they must be compensated. But you are aware that there are some white farmers, 409 of them, that remain on their properties. And we are saying, just like Zimbabweans are buying land, they too must buy the land. So it's again in terms of the Constitution. The Constitution says we must pay BIPA farmers for the compensate them for land and for the improvements. And that's what I said, that those unoccupied BIPA farms, there are 67, and that is what the government is considering. I don't know where the confusion arose from. And we also then said the president was magnanimous and said the Tanganyika African Purchase Area, who accessed these farms before independence, and there are over 10,000 of them. And the president simply said, if you are giving title to the A1s and A2s who got land after independence, how about these Africans who got land before independence? Also give them title. So the confusion in this group called journalists is amazing, is astounding. And please, I beg you, for the sake of progress for Zimbabwe, ensure that you report more accurately. And if you are unable to decipher or to translate, because I was saying this in Shona, so I thought it was lost in translation. But that it was circulated, the wrong translation, that I mentioned the countries. If you go to the parliamentary clip, there is no mention of a country. But the first thing that is actually out are 4 countries that are mentioned in Europe that we are returning, that the former president must be turning in his grave. When the constitution was made under his purview, the former president. And these are the constitutional aspects that the Second Republic is fulfilling. So please familiarize yourselves with the supreme law of the land called the Constitution, and also get periodic updates from the relevant minister. I hope this closes this chapter. I'm patriotic, and one day I'm sure our history will be known. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anxious Masuka.